4 minutes. Starting on time. Get ready.
Only 2 players in the marker.
Yeah, well, if they're not here, they get penalised like penalties.
Yes.
Now. Yes, it is.
Is it your car? Yep. Feel it pocket there. That's what people are going to start to play. You're right this side.
Thanks, man.
Not at all. I mean, not being dry and everything. It's raining this morning. This morning I see Charlie. Just to see
Gentlemen, we've got 2 minutes to close.
This week, my brother's had a stroke, so I've been to see him in the hospital. And then the friends of the family died. I've never known anything like it in my life. Well, I've been going through this too.
Don't send my followers.
Yes, I noticed that. Yes, I did. Literally so good.
stuck in the bridges like I have been. I did for a long time. Just like this year.
Well, I have to do that.
Choice is yours, right?
Good afternoon and welcome to David Causier versus Ryan Mears. I'm joined in commentary by Chris Coombe from the UK, who knows both of these players very well. Chris is also a director at World Billiards, our organising body, and did very well in the tournament. Chris, who knocked you out in the end?
Well, I travelled all this way, but unfortunately I got drawn against my Plymouth teammate Steve Brookshaw. So, but it was a close match. Really, only lost by 11 in the end. But we played each other quite a few times in various events. So, but could have gone either way, really. But
Long way to come when you could have played the match at home. And who's Steve playing in this round now?
So, Steve played in the earlier match this morning. He lost to Mike Russell. So,
Okay.
I think Mike had a 400-odd break against him there. But
Right. Well, it looks like the superstars are kind of gearing up. David Causier, who's on screen at the moment, had a 665, I think, yesterday in a 45-minute match. If you do the maths on that, he was scoring at over 800 an hour. It's not the first time he scored at over 800 an hour. In fact, he averages 800 an hour in all competitions. So he's a very, very quick player. How often do you get to play him?
I've played Dave a few times already, a few times in the groups, and come up against him a few times in knockout rounds as well. So it's you're always up against it, really. But it's great to play someone like that and see how it's done, you know. But when you get your chance, you really got to try and score. But doing a 600 break in 45 minutes, like you say, is pretty good going, isn't it? Really. I mean,
Well, it's just it's extraordinary, isn't it? So
I didn't get a chance to see Dave yesterday because he was at the other club, but
yes,
I look forward to seeing his game here today.
yeah, likewise. He's obviously starting to find some form. And Ryan, how's Ryan been going in domestic competition in the UK?
Yeah, he's been travelling to most of the events really. He's been he's always there or thereabouts really in the latter sort of stages. Obviously he plays a lot of snooker as well, so he keeps his arm going, and sort of virtually every week I think playing tournaments. Played a lot of tournaments around the west of England, which is sort of that sort of area that he's from, west and south of England. So and obviously the World Billiard events. So
where's the real hotbed for billiards in the UK?
Only around still north of England, Teesside. That's obviously really strong. They have been for a long time. Many top players have come from that area, but there's generally just even from my area, the west of England, there's quite a few strong players, and there's a few of us that sort of travel to the events, and obviously Ryan's from more sort of south area, so I mean generally there's some areas where billiards is not quite as widely played, but it's north of England particularly is strong.
And how old's Ryan now?
He's I think he's about 27, I believe. I'm not sure of his exact age, but slightly older than me. But good all-round game, really. Good potter, good cueist. He can play top of the table as well when he gets the balls there.
I think he had his highest break in Canada, didn't he?
Yeah, he had quite a few good breaks in Canada, actually.
260-ish.
Yeah, he really looked like, I wasn't there, but I saw quite a bit of the streaming, and he looked like he was really, really cueing well at that event. I think he played in Ireland as well, which was just before, so he was quite warmed up by the time he got to Canada. Looks like if he goes to this road, he might see an example of his
potting
good
skill.
Cueing, yeah. We'll commentator's curse there, possibly.
Yeah, well, that's right. He's lined it up straight, so let's see what happens. Of course.
With the white where it was, Dave's cue ball, I suppose he had a chance of leaving it safe if he missed it. But earlier in the match, it's not the sort of shot you want to be faced with, I suppose, but
no.
Didn't.
So how would you describe David's style as a player?
Well, he, I think probably by his own admission, he doesn't play quite as tight a top of the table game as perhaps some of the other top players like Russell, perhaps. But obviously he can score, just as heavily as anyone, or So he's a tremendous scorer. But quite an exciting game, of course. Any balls look out of position at times, and in certain positions that he can play incredible shots to keep the break going. So great to watch, really.
Very creative player.
Yeah, creative player. Yeah.
What's give me odds on the match here?
Well, I think obviously, I think Causier is the favourite definitely, but if Ryan gets going, I'm sure he could, produce some nice breaks in a 90-minute match. So he just needs to try and, obviously make the most of the chance that he gets. But I think Dave's going to be pretty hard to stop, really, isn't he? But
how have you found the conditions here, the tables?
Oh, excellent! Yeah, really good. Yeah, I mean, I arrived here Thursday, and I sort of had a couple of days practice before the World Open, and they've been superb. The club and the venue is brilliant. And the hotel upstairs is fantastic. So I think it's perfect conditions for billiards. Really, the tables are really nice pace, responsive, and the cushions are just the right sort of not too bouncy or anything. So yeah, fantastic tables, really.
So I'm going to put you on the spot and say, for the World Billiards Championship, this is the warm-up event we're watching now, the World Open. I'm going to ask you to name the 4 semi-finalists for the World Billiards Championship.
For the World Women's Championship.
World Billiards
World Billiards, sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah, the World.
you know billiards, you're on the board.
The World Billiards Championship, yeah. Well, I mean, you'd have to put. I think you'd have to put Dave Causier in the mix. Obviously, I mean, there's so many good players here. It's hard to pick. But I'd put Dave Causier in there. I think Peter Gilchrist and Mike Russell are going to be in the mix. They've been around. Mike Russell was obviously in the. Well, those are the 2 finalists on the last time it was played in Australia, in actual fact. But
well, that's true.
Yeah,
that was back in 1989 in Lura. No, I'm stand corrected. It was at Mounties, but they were the finalists in Lura in '89 as a couple of teenage boys, in fact. So they've been doing this a little while. So we've got 3 of you 4.
That's given me a bit of time to think about my 4th player, but I'm going to put Matt Bolton in the mix. Not Dan was just pointing at me, but I can't put myself in the mix, unfortunately. But
no, you can't. Let me put you in the mix, but no, you're not allowed to put yourself in the mix.
I think I'd put Matt Bolton in the mix as in the top in the semi-finalist lineup for me. But it's obviously one of the home players here. But yeah, it's so difficult to. I mean, you could probably pick a dozen players possibly that you could end up in the semi-finals. So, but yeah, well, should be some great few days of billiards before we get to that stage. So
yes,
look forward to seeing it all unfold. But.
David's really a first striker, isn't he? He just sights 2 feathers and a strike, especially as he gets rolling on the break.
Yeah, it gets down a few short feathers and bang.
Yep. I think it's a natural gift, to be a first sider. So were you here yesterday or at Yarraville?
No, I was here yesterday, playing my group matches here, so it's, tables were really playing nice, and few spectators in as well, which is nice to see. There'll be a few more as the week goes on.
There'll be a lot more as the week goes on. In fact, you can see the grandstand seating in there behind David as he's playing now. All of those seats at both ends are all sold, and that'll be nice to have a crowd of people watching. We seldom get that in billiards, but through word of mouth and cunning promotions, we've managed to fill the room. We also have here the John Roberts Trophy, which is the oldest trophy in world sport, dating from 1870. First time it's left England, so thank you for lending it to us. We appreciate it. And we're not giving it back.
Well, that was how I do have a bit of reading, I suppose, on the history, and that was
what happened with Walter Lindrum. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
it was. He had a bit of an argument with Harold Bissett, who was the chairman of the Billiards Association back then, and Walter said, "I've got it. If you want it, come and get it." So he hung on to the trophy in Australia and was He had one challenge in that time from Joe Davis, who came out to Australia and played Walter for it, but having had one try, he never tried again. And so Walter remained undefeated but uncontested during that time.
I was reading something that was written in a program, which was a really nice program that was made about the event, and I did read that that 1934 championship was played in Melbourne. Is that right?
That is right. Yes, in fact, it was played 2 blocks from here, which is rather nice. Yes. And have you managed to pop out and see Walter's grave yet?
I did. Yeah, I did. I popped
Yeah,
down there
I
the
thought
other
I
day.
saw you did. Yeah.
Read quite a lot about it in books and seen pictures and over the last few years. So it's great to be able to see it. And
Yeah. That Walter lies underneath a marble slab, which is crafted in the shape of a billiard table, with a bronze cue and 3 bronze balls on the top. And that grave marker was actually paid for by the Sportsmen's Association of Australia, which was a charity that Walter and Donald Bradman and others set up to help the needy. And so Walter was the first president, and they provided the gravestone as a mark of their respect. But it's the most visited grave site in Australia.
it's really fascinating, really. I did also see near to Walter's grave, Frederick Lindrum's grave, which
Yes.
I believe was, correct me if I'm wrong, was that his brother?
I'm not sure which Frederick it
Lindrum the
was.
second and the third, I believe.
Yes, so the family history is that the first Lindrum in Australia was actually Friedrich Wilhelm von Lindrum, a German name, but they actually emigrated from your hometown of
Yeah,
Plymouth.
that's right. I was just going to.
So-
that's one of the things I do remember reading about, actually.
Yeah, so he was from Prussia, but Prussia via Plymouth. So when he came out to Australia, he set up business in South Australia as a hotelier and winemaker, one of the first German winemakers in South Australia, which became famous for its vineyards. And so he was the kind of father of the dynasty, and Frederick had a son, and he anglicised the name to Frederick, and we know him as Fred II, and Fred II had a son that we call Fred III. Later on in the week, Tammy Lindrum will be here. In fact, she's presenting the ladies' trophy, and she's one of the last surviving members of that family. She was Horace's daughter, so Fred I, Fred II, Fred III, and Walter was the younger brother of Fred III, and then their nephew was Horace. So did you read the article on the long game?
I haven't quite got to that bit yet, but it's going to be part of my reading material
Bedtime
this week.
reading? Okay.
So, yeah, nice to read about the history of the game and the trophy. And
Well, what's interesting there is that Friedrich actually played. You would have seen the glorious trophy, the John Roberts Trophy. There's a picture behind David Causier's bum, as we speak, of the trophy. And that was awarded in 1870 to John Roberts Jr., the second of that family line. But the Lindrums and the Roberts have been fighting each other since 1865. So the first match was Friedrich versus John Roberts Sr., and the story is that Friedrich got him drunk on his good wine product and beat him, and he was the reigning world champion. And that very night, the same night that he beat John Roberts Sr., his wife gave birth to a son, Fred II. And Frederick II and Frederick III then played off against John Roberts Jr. And John Roberts Jr. in turn coached a local lad, Tom Newman. And Frederick II coached Walter. So Frederick II, so Walter then played Tom Newman. Tom Newman coached Jack Carnham, and Walter Lindrum coached Bob Marshall, who then played off against each other. And now Bob Marshall coached Matt Bolton, who's here at this tournament, and Jack Carnham coached Mike Russell, who's here at this tournament. So that's the same battle that's been going on since
great history, isn't it?
Since the 17th of September 1865. So we've got a little history in this game.
Absolutely, something to be proud of, really.
Yeah, and we've got a few family dynasties. We've got Manoj and Sourav Qatari, the Lindrums, of course, the Roberts. Sourav Qatari is our reigning world champion, and his father Manoj was a world amateur champion. And of course we've got the Mears dynasty, Ray and Ryan.
Of course.
Although in that case, the son is coaching the father.
It's just an example of his left-handed skills. There, Ryan can play a really good left-handed game when he needs to, but it looks like he's got a little bit of time to get his arm going in the early part of this match.
Yep.
While we've been talking. Still a long way to go, obviously, but
Yes.
always nice to have a few shots at the beginning to get a feel of the table. I'm not sure if Ryan's played on this table yet. Well, actually, he was playing at the Yarraville yesterday, so he's
unless he
probably
practiced on it
probably his first
on
time
the practice
table,
days,
so
yeah.
on this particular table. And Dave's as well, for that matter.
This table's got the double Peridot luminaires on there, so there's not a shadow on the table. The TV lights, we've got a high camera angle here as well.
So he's got a nice position here. He may decide to drop the white behind the spot and pot the red.
Yep.
Looks like
That's the obvious thing to do.
Talking to Lindrum, I think he said this was the
direct method.
most recommended way of getting to the top of the table.
In fact, his only way, towards the end of his career, he's said to have eliminated the drop cannon from his game because it was too chancy.
Yeah.
So he would only play what he called direct method, which is what we're about to see here.
Yeah.
Drop the opponent's ball behind the spot, and looks like a stun pot red here. No, just a gentle run through. No reason at this early stage for David to get concerned, but he hasn't hit his straps yet.
There's a nice view from that camera angle there, knocking the white up towards the line across the where the spot is. So next shot he can leave himself a cannon and get it a bit nearer the spot, the white ball. Also get it virtually in behind the spot, just sighted to one side.
Yes.
Just like that.
Just like that.
Might need another cannon now, just didn't quite get the red thick enough from that position, but
so
no
his
real
choice
danger.
now is cannon or an in off the red, looks like.
Yeah.
I think he wants the
If
cannon.
he plays a cannon, he may just... I don't suppose he really wants to move the white too far from where he is. I don't think he can pot the red and avoid the white, so...
He almost reached out left-handed again. And then he thought, hang on a minute, it's Causier. Bit of side to get in behind it by the looks of it.
Still in good position. Like I said,
That's okay.
white's just slightly to one side, but no problems really for Ryan at the moment.
Still in the box.
Yeah. We watch the top players like, well, Russell, Gilchrist, and so on, and they make top of the table look so easy and such precise control. But you know, it's all about improvisation, I guess. And
yeah, well, they say every shot's a recovery shot.
Yeah, exactly. Can't keep them in absolutely pinpoint position all the time. So,
No.
but with once you get the position, you can sort of keep them there for some time, even if you haven't got it absolutely
Yeah, I mean,
precise. It takes many years of practice.
Yes,
doesn't it?
yes, yes. I mean, billiards is all a little bit vague compared to, say, snooker, where you're really only moving one ball, the cue ball, and the ball that you're targeting goes off the table, so you don't have to concern yourself with that. So really you're trying to position one ball in snooker. In billiards you're trying to
Looks like he
position
was
three.
just trying to play a really thin cannon there, Ryan, and just missed the first object ball there. It's first short
Jenny.
Jenny of the match, I believe.
Yeah, it is.
Played it nicely. I wonder if he'll play a really aggressive shot here, pot the red and just cannon on top of the yellow just to knock it. Well, he didn't play that one. Not saying it's the wrong shot, of course, but
No. It's completely the wrong shot, but David plays those.
I have seen some players may have played the pot red in the middle and cannon on top of the yellow, knocked it, but quite an aggressive shot, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's great to see how these top players have their own ideas of certain positions, I suppose. But
David has quite an idiosyncratic action where he just tilts his head after the shot. After he's delivered the cue, he just tilts his head on the side as if to have a better look at where it's going. Seems to jump on it, but he doesn't. He delivers and then... Yeah. Dan, our producer, thinks it's before. He's probably does, or during. It doesn't affect his accuracy, but he always looks like he's riding the shot. That's about as long a pause as I've ever seen him make to think. All at once.
Just gone slightly awkward here. But
Yeah.
Dazer was saying about Ryan being a good potter. Obviously, Dazer an exceptional potter as well, and
Yes.
you very rarely see him miss one. But he may play a cannoneer across the side cushion and back to the yellow.
You're exactly right. Gone wrong here. Needs a PK screw shot. It's all so easy, isn't it? Oops.
Be a bit disappointed to see the yellow drop in there, obviously.
Oops.
But no doubt he'll play a double bulk very shortly.
When you say very shortly, immediately.
Immediately, yeah.
Look at that. That's such a typical Causier shot, to take it off so many cushions and then set up his next scoring shot perfectly.
So
Ryan has to attack this. He's got to attack this.
Can't really leave the balls where they are, knowing Causier's got a...
Oh, miscue.
Miscue there, what you say?
Yep. But strangely not a foul. Because the balls are in the protection of balk, it's considered to be a miss, not a foul.
That's right. As long as the cue ball obviously strikes the cushion outside of bulk, then that'll be a miss.
Yes.
And anyone who's not familiar with the difference between a foul and a miss, it's still 2 points to the effort player, but after a miss, the non-offender can't have the ball spotted. He has to play from where they are on the table.
Look at that shot where he's brought that yellow around off all those cushions to sit into perfect top of the table position. He's missed the red following, but extraordinary his control of the angles and the throws. Best I've ever seen, without question.
So, referee just giving the cue ball clean, and let's see what Ryan attempts here. Not been left much, but...
Now, I'm about to be replaced in commentary by Tad Babiak from South Australia, who's kindly consented to say a few words and fill us in on his views about the tournament so far. So I'll hand over to Tad.
So welcome Tad to the commentary box here. So how have you been finding the tournament so far? Were you playing here or at the Yarraville yesterday for the World Open? There we go, just getting your microphone set up. Yeah,
Yep.
welcome.
Yeah, g'day Chris. Thanks very much. And g'day to all the people watching. Yes, I've really enjoyed the tournament here. I had my first match here at the RACV this morning. I actually played Ryan Mears in the last 16. But I spent the qualifying rounds were all at Yarraville. Slightly different conditions to here. I think Ryan probably struggled a bit with the conditions this morning, but yeah, very, very, very lovely tables to play on. This club's magnificent in terms of its history and the tables they've got here. And of course, we're very, very fortunate to have so many high quality players in the field this year. I understand it's one of the strongest fields they've had in a long time. So
Yeah, I think you're right there. It's great to see all these top players in one room, and we've had some great world championships in previous years, but you know, for various reasons, there's sometimes been some top players not playing in certain events or certain years, but it's great to see all these players here playing, and so I think whoever wins is going to be a great champion, that's for sure. But
David in particular has been playing extremely well. He made I believe it was a 655
Absolutely,
yesterday up at Yarraville. That's a surprise.
yeah, just like I say, it's both of these two players' first match on these tables. I mean, the top players obviously on this particular table, and they adjust really quickly. That's one of the things that really strikes me about the top players, how quickly they adjust to certain tables. But some shots are bound to react slightly differently, perhaps to what they were yesterday at the Yarraville. For all tables react differently, as you know, and so.
It was. I was speaking to Joe Manici after his match with David, and Joe was amazed how quickly David switched into gear on the table, because it's. I believe they're using a number 10 strawn here, which it throws slightly differently. There's. It seems to squirt quite a lot more if you put side spin on
That's
it.
right,
And Joe
yeah.
Joe actually struggled with that, whereas Dave switched straight into gear. I think he made a 300 or something straight off.
It only takes you about 2 weeks to find that.
Yeah. Ryan had the same problem. He was, this morning he was really struggling controlling the ball when he was hitting slightly off centre deliberately. So
Yeah, it's just almost subconscious, I think, with a lot of all the top players really. They know how a table reacts and the cloth so quickly, but that's worked out quite nicely there for Ryan with the red over the top pocket.
Well, you'd think you'd think he'd get the red under control here for a losing hazard or a pot in the middle pocket, but push the white down beyond the spot fairly shortly for
You
top
played
of the
this
table.
little sequence a few moments ago when dropping the white beyond the spot with an off in the middle and potted the red, but he's not going to pot the red from D from there, but
No.
he'd have to play a few more shots, but he'd have to maybe decide to leave a drop cannon, but see how this pans out. All these top players are looking to get the balls at the top of the table. Really, that's their game plan really for all the time.
And that surprised me by Ryan. I thought he'd actually drop the white behind the spot before he played what he just did then, and he just potted it to get there. But it looks like he's going to play a little bit of a cannon and push it over the middle pocket, white down the table slightly. Or is he going in off?
If he did lose the red, he would have a shot here off the white and into the top pocket. So his main thing I think for that I try to do for those particular shots, make sure you leave the red on. I know he's not quite got the white where he wanted it perhaps, but at least he's got a shot on the red to keep the break going. And
Looks like he's playing the slow pot. I don't think he's left himself quite on the line there, and the in off white might be tricky. He may need to play this perhaps off a cushion to gather them together near the top of the table. Can't really tell from the TV picture whether the red's on or not. It looks like he's playing the cannon.
Could be room to go behind this white if he's not. Oh, he did play it direct, in fact.
Oh, he's played it direct.
Yeah. I wonder if this white is tight on a cushion, he may have a little double kiss in off here.
A
Not
little
sure
ricochet.
if it's a slight gap, he may be able to screw it. You could get the screwing off, but no problem there.
He hit it thin.
I think as soon as he hit that he was.
You could see his
just
cue
offline
come
there.
offline.
Yeah.
I think he was trying to make sure he didn't move the red from where it was.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he wanted to avoid the red. Really, if the yellow collided with the red, position would have not been guaranteed there. So Dave quickly back at the table. See how quickly he can manoeuvre the balls back to where he wants them.
Fairly quickly.
Yeah.
Dave, more than all the other top players from England, is not at all reluctant to go back to open table play and entertain everyone with his all-round ability. Great player to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, they obviously, as you know, they can play all the open game, but they prefer to score much quicker at the top of the table than. I don't think there's any. There's no other quicker way of scoring really. I mean, years ago they used to play a lot of big breaks using nursery cannons, but for various reasons that's not played anymore really. So there's only a few small number of players really, I guess, that can do it, but not seen in match play at all really. So top of the table is what we see a lot of, which is great to watch.
Yes, it's a very subtle style of play. In some respects, we're very fortunate now that we have the spotted balls, so we can actually see some of the very subtle spins that are put into place whilst controlling the balls at the top of the table. For the uninitiated, it looks very repetitive, but it's anything but.
And it's just the little touches aside that when they're addressing the ball, perhaps just a fraction off centre, and that really makes a big difference to a lot of the shots at the top of the table.
Yep.
And but even with the, like you say, the spotted balls, you can really see, especially with shots where the side's more obvious, such as Jenny's and those sort of shots, and the screw shots played, screwing offs. It's really good for the spectators to see what spin they're putting on the cue ball.
It's interesting what you're saying in terms of the fact that all of these guys nowadays play top of the table. In some respects, that's really down to the rules. If you have a look at the 15 hazard draw, it's pretty well killed red ball play, especially at this level. You just can't score quickly enough or heavily enough in timed games, etc. You have to have that game in the first place to get to the top of the table, but it's not the quickest way to score. And of course, with nursery cannons, both the 75 cannon rule and the balk line rule has pretty well killed it. So
I think that's a good point as well. Like, you've got to have a really good red ball game and open play to actually get the balls to the top of the table in the first place, because it's just missed the. Be a bit disappointed with the in off there, but if no matter how good you can play top of the table, perhaps in practice, you've got to manoeuvre the balls there in a match play scenario. I mean, you may occasionally be left there by your opponent, but majority of the time you've got to work the balls there, and that can sometimes take a bit of time for the. But obviously the top players, get there so fast, and
it's very noticeable that all of them are extremely good hazard strikers, and they also manoeuvre the balls very quickly into the scoring zone, from which they can then get to the top of the table. Usually you see it within about 3 or 4 shots. Occasionally they do something creative, but the standard ways of both drop cannons or the direct route to the top of the table is what they mostly rely on.
I mean, the two types of top of the table, of course, are the floating white, which is when the opponent's cue ball is just behind the spot, and it floats around the top of the table. So they quite often play the recovery cannon underneath the cue ball to slightly knock it towards the spot again. Or the postman's knock, which is when the opponent's cue ball is tight on the cushion, more or less, and right behind the spot, and they pretty much keep it there for as long as possible. Cannon pot, and so on. Or sometimes they'll play a cannon and then followed by 2 pots. Pot over the pocket and then a pot over the pot off the spot. But I think the floater white is what we see more of, really, by the top players. But
all of these guys, of course, can play either. Mike in particular is quite quick at moving away from floating white. Moving away from postman's knock back to floating white at the earliest opportunity.
Absolutely, yeah.
The great Indian player Geet Sethi is probably the greatest postman's knock player we've had in recent times. He's quite remarkable in terms of his control.
I've got a video from, I believe it was 2001, the World Championship final, and he made a 800 break, and I think it was virtually all postman's knock. It was almost it's fantastic to watch, and just great to see, really. Just had a message that so Mike Russell is leading Robbie Fulvari in the early part of this match. And the other match that's going on is Matt Bolton playing Rob Hall and Peter Gilchrist playing Dvaj Harrier. We'll see if we can get the scores from the other 2 games shortly. But I mean, Dvaj Harrier is another player that's really improved greatly. Really, I mean, he's always been a top player, of course, but when he first came to Leeds, he wasn't sort of at the top ranks, but I think he came over about 2013 or 14, I believe, and that was the first time he'd sort of played in the World Championship. And he's really, over the years, now he's sort of 500 break player and a contender for any event that he goes in, really. And so I've really seen his game really excel, and I think he's obviously been practicing with all the top Indian players and competing in all these international events. So I believe he's 25 years of age, so Dvaj Harrier from India. It's just caught that a little bit thick as he reached it, or
No.
quite really fast cloth, but just short there on the yellow.
Has he got a shot here? Is he going to have to swerve it slightly? A little bit of a mass, so just try to score here. On the elevated cue, it's going to swerve around the white ball. Oh, he's overdone it. They're very, very hard to judge, especially when there's so much distance between the balls.
Yeah.
But he didn't really have any other shots.
What's worse is his left Dave, really good. It's a difficult position there. I mean,
do you think Dave is going to play the in-off red at this stage and get them both under? It looks like he is.
I think Dave tends to play, quite a lot of drop cannons. So I think he'll drop the yellow down there and play a drop cannon.
No, he's hit it fairly firm.
Yeah, he has. Yeah.
That's the thing in billiards. There's so much scope for individual preferences in how to get there.
Absolutely.
And it looks like he's in the vicinity now. He's got the white in about the vicinity of the box. At some stage, he'll try to put himself to the left-hand side of the table as we're looking at it to push the yellow ball behind the spot with a small cannon. Oh, it doesn't pot. Tricky.
That's a good example of
improvising.
Great recovery shot. Yeah, improvise and just it just gets down no problem. It just plays these great cannons and or great shots generally. And
he'll be unlucky if that red goes in, because that was very well played. He knew exactly where he was putting the red after the cannon. That's one of the problems that beginners to the game actually have, is that they're so intent on just scoring, because it is so difficult at times, that they lose control of the position of the ball, whereas these guys are always looking at where their next shot's coming from. They're controlling the balls to make sure that they've got another scoring shot afterwards.
And even in positions such as this, I mean, anybody could probably score from that position there, but with the ball so close together, but it's the position after the shot that's, you know, even that can go wrong quite easily for if you're not sure of the shot to play. And sometimes it's the easiest scoring shot. Sometimes it can actually be the.
Is he going to push it beyond the spot
wrong.
with a little cushion cannon here?
Yeah, cushion cannon.
He has done.
Played that really nicely.
Yeah, that's beautifully played.
I think he would have preferred a thicker contact on the red, but he's still got a shot.
Well, David, like all of these very good players, is an extremely good potter of the ball as well. So. Well, he's lost the red, unfortunately, there.
Looks like that yellow's just come away from the side cushion enough to play a direct drop cannon. Needs to pull it over lots of runners' side. Played that really nicely.
He did.
Yeah.
He's placed the white beautifully as well. Does he have the angle to get back to the left side of the table? Yes, looks like he does. That's beautifully played.
Yeah. So I think this is the first time that Dave's really got balls exactly at the top of the table in this match.
Yep. And then we'll have an exhibition in how to play a floating white. I think Ryan was saying that he's played David a number of times over a period of time, and he still considers that he's learning the game, and he's learnt so much from playing Dave so many times. So.
I think that's the thing when players like myself and people are still sort of improving and playing these top players. You've really got to try and learn from what they do, and even though you may feel like you're sat down a lot, it's a great opportunity to really see up close what they're doing, and when you do get that chance, even if the match is long gone, a chance of winning, obviously you just got to be able to even make a small break yourself is enough to give you confidence, even though you may be 1,000 behind. Just when you've been sat there a long time and you get a chance and you can make a little break yourself, it's that in itself can give you a bit of confidence, that because when you're cold, obviously, as you know, it's difficult to get going sometimes against these top players. But just cue ball dropped in there, so this could be an example of one of Dave's all around the table. Red is he going to send the red around the table?
I think he will, yeah, absolutely. Coming back towards the middle pocket. He hasn't really moved the white all that much from the top end, so he can still recover it from there, should he choose to. Mind you, Dave, more than anyone else, is not really obsessive about necessarily holding there. He's very confident being able to get it back very quickly if he needs to. In some respects, it's very noticeable that the hotbeds of billiards and some of the places that have produced the best players over the last few years have been the parts of the world that have had the benefit of having players who are very adept in the first place. It's very difficult to learn, in particular, these more advanced aspects of the games, unless you're either coached or have someone to learn to. Top of the table is a classic example in the sense that often it's a combination of 2-3 move combinations at times, and they're not obvious unless you see them over and over and over again, or have someone explain what they're trying to do.
Absolutely right, yeah. Yeah, so a lot of the top players, Mike Russell, Peter Gilchrist, Dave Causier, Chris Shutt, who no longer is playing at the moment, and a number of other top players have come from the Teesside Boys Billiards League. So when they were sort of growing up, and regular coaching and tournaments in that area in their leagues and local clubs, and they produced quite a few world championships between them, really.
Was Roxton Chapman one of the Teesside members as well?
Yeah, I believe he was. Yeah, or I think he may have been more Peterborough way, in fact.
Oh, right.
But Roxton's another fantastic curious. Not in this championship, unfortunately, not playing here, but he's really wonderful curious. One of my favourite players to watch. And he has played a few events recently, and fantastic player, fantastic scorer.
I noticed that unfortunately Martin Goodwill had to pull out of the competition. I was looking forward to seeing him play live.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that Martin couldn't make it to this event, but Martin's also been playing really well lately in events. He had a 400 break in Ireland, and he got to the final of both the events that held in Ireland a few months ago, the Irish Open and the European Open. So he's been English champion several times, and always in the latter stages of the World Billiard events. So
Martin's also been very instrumental in some of the revival, in particular the coaching of the game. Martin's been appointed the head coach for World Billiards by the WPBSA, and I believe he's put together a whole stack of accreditations, and now we have a very large number of accredited coaches all around the world through Singapore, Australia, the UK, and hopefully over the next few years we may see more revival of billiards.
Yeah.
Speaking as a coach, I personally think that beginning players are better served by learning to play billiards first before they play snooker.
That's right. Yeah, Martin Goodwill and Philip Welliver, two of the main people really that have been doing a lot of work for the World Billiards coaching. And like you say, there's quite a lot of coaches now that are with the World Billiards certificate. So. And all around the world, so it's really, and like you say, the best way of to keep the game going is for the younger players and people new to the game to learn the basics and get involved, because the skills are not immediately obvious. So unlike perhaps snooker, where it's a bit more easier to pick up. So unless you get taught, it's may not be as attractive for people to get stuck into, but
it's interesting from a coaching perspective, because it's much easier to teach cueing when the table's uncluttered, when you and also beginners have because of the more generous margin of error, ignoring positional considerations that you have with in-offs versus potting. They can have success earlier, which is important when you have junior players. But it also teaches them a whole range of shots. My background was a snooker player for many, many years beforehand, and although you have to be able to play all of the positional shots. Billiards is much more precise in terms and diverse in terms of the shots that you're playing. So in snooker it's predominantly a stun game or a screw game. You do see a little bit of topspin or whatever, but there's enormous amounts of subtleties with side spin, as well as every single shot that you play in snooker exists in billiards and then some. So, and there are certain shots that are just wonderful to watch on a billiard table that there's absolutely no equivalent of on a snooker table. So, forcing in offs, jennies, double kiss cannons, etc. So,
and of course, it's snooker. You're only really controlling the object ball goes into the pocket, and you're only controlling the cue ball.
Correct.
Majority of the time. So, whereas obviously in billiards you've got to control all three balls. So.
Well, certainly in cannon play.
So how many years did you play snooker for before you took up billiards seriously?
Oh, well, I only started about a year ago, taking billiards seriously. Yeah. So I did play billiards at sort of a club level because it was a requirement as part of our snooker leagues over the years. But but I didn't actually start studying the game or playing it seriously up until about a year ago, and now I'm at the point where I'm playing snooker, but it's really my second favourite. So
I think you hear a lot really of players that get the bug of billiards once they start playing. It's not unusual at all, really, to see that. You know, it's just you graduate as Peter Tankard's just told me. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Well, it's true. And in some respects in South Australia we've been probably less fortunate than a couple of other places in Australia, is that we haven't had a 300, 400, 500 break series of players around to teach the next generation. So we're sort of having to reinvent the wheel, as it were, and broadcasts like this are probably a godsend to most of us, because we get a chance to actually look at first class play over and over and have some sort of idea what's going on. I think in Victoria they had a very long tradition with the Gannams, and prior to that I believe Tom Cleary and Jim Long were both based here, Dave Collins, so they had, and of course the Lindrams. So they had a very long history of people who knew the game very well, in some cases intimately. In Western Australia they of course had Bob Marshall. I believe in New South Wales they had Phil Tarrant for a while. So these players benefited from, and of course Murdo O'Donoghue, who I believe coached Robbie Folvari. So these people had the opportunity to learn from some people who knew how to play all facets of the game at a very high level, whereas in South Australia that hasn't been the case for a very long time. So, but we're hoping to make a turnaround. We're promoting the game a lot, and we're doing a lot of coaching clinics and trying to get people enthusiastic. And in a lot of respects, we've made quite a lot of progress in that regard. We run a number of handicap competitions, and both in the short format and slightly more traditional format. And the experience.
Great to hear that. Yeah, absolutely.
The experience is that all of the players' standards is slowly picking up, which is a nice thing. Looks like Dave's going very well
Dave's
here.
going very well here, and we were saying earlier about the different varieties of top of the table play. Well, the two main varieties, postman's knock and float and white, and this is the postman's knock form of the top of the table. Got the object ball, opponent's object ball pinned right to the top cushion.
In some ways you need to be far more precise in the placement of the white ball after the pot red in this
right.
play.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons why perhaps postman's knock's not played quite as often in the top levels when the bulk line crossing rule is applied, which is not in this World Open but in the main World Championship it will be, that, like I say, when you've got to be much more accurate with your cue ball position, so when you're crossing the bulk line going all around the table, you've got to really leave it exactly in the right position for the next cannon, which you've got a little bit more margin of error in the floating white as to where you leave it.
I've noticed that Pankaj quite often plays the two-pot option when he's got floating white for exactly that reason, to cross the bulk line. So, but that's a very good point, and again, that's not something that's obvious to the players who aren't either coached or see a lot of this play, about why a particular method is favoured by more of the top players than. And of course there's the inherent safety aspect of postman's knock, because when the player does lose position, it's usually after they've played the 3-6-9 combination and end up losing control of the red ball. They tend to occasionally miss a long loser, and the opponent's white is of course pinned to the top cushion with not much in the way of control options.
So 2 pots off the spot, and the red goes on to the middle spot.
And his break's gone to 262 and still.
If he'll play the in-off red here and send it over the right-hand side of the table as we look. to set up a drop cannon. And it looks like he's playing a cannon now. Thought he may have perhaps played him off into the other pocket, but that's the shot he's seen there.
Of course, now he's got the in off the white off the yellow ball available to him from in hand, and the red's in the scoring zone. So to expect, if he really wants to, he'll be back at the top of the table inside of about 3 or 4 shots.
Yeah, no problem at all for Dave. And like I say, I'm still very much learning, so I try and watch these top guys and top players as much as possible, and see how they manoeuvre the balls around and in certain positions, because we can watch top of the table, lots of that, which is great, but when they're not in position, that's the times when you can see really what sort of patterns of play they're playing.
He's playing it. And he's put the white back into the scoring zone for the drop cannon later on in the piece. You'd think he'd want to get in hand fairly quickly.
Does he? Just effortless.
Well, he's stunned onto the line here, or is he too straight? He's fairly straight. Sometimes Dave can be a bit difficult to predict because he has such a large range of shots. Oh, he's left a drop cannon again. And how long have you played, Chris?
Well, I started playing snooker first when I was 11 years of age. So, and then after a few years, I sort of discovered billiards, and I still play a bit of snooker, but yeah, billiards is my preferred game now by far. So I've been playing billiards about 10 years or so now, I believe. Just drop the red in there, but would have preferred to see it over the top pocket. But
double kiss cannon here,
yeah,
possibly?
I think it could be the shot there. That's the one.
Screw cannon, red around the table, possibly. Looks like it. I think this is a shot that Steve Mifsud plays quite a lot as well. It looks simple, but it's so difficult. That cannon had to be very precise to get on the correct side of the red ball. And he hasn't taken any risks there. He's pushed it over the pocket, played a little soft cannon, and now he's back in perfect postman's knot position.
So he's restored that position he was in a few moments ago, and
he's passed the 300 mark quite comfortably here, and no end inside at the moment. That's also one of the most difficult things about this game. You can be sitting down for the best part of 3/4 of an hour while one of these top players just relentlessly piles on the score, and when you get back to the table, no pressure whatsoever.
And I believe that, going back again to a bit of the history, so Walter Lindrup had his 4,137, I believe, and so playing Joe Davis, and so Joe would have been sat down for, well, several sessions, I think, let alone minutes, or and I think Joe came right back to the table and made a 1,000 break himself. I'm not exactly sure what the break was, but it was definitely a 1,000 break. Yeah. So
that takes some mental toughness.
Absolutely, yeah. Just to be sat down for that amount of time and not even getting a shot on the table, and to suddenly come back and make a 1,000 break yourself. I mean, that sometimes can be forgotten about in when we're talking about these breaks, but.
Well, people talk about, he's missed that. He's hit it very fine. The 328 break, that's very useful by anybody's standards.
Absolutely, yeah.
And of course now Ryan's facing about a 400 point deficit with half an hour to go. So
it's a brilliant break from Dave Causier there. So Ryan just needs to. I mean, I think he's, I think he's not likely to win from here, but just nice to get his arm going a bit, and
well, often it's all about pride of performance as well. you've travelled a long way to play in these tournaments, and if you can, you'd like to put on a bit of a show and demonstrate to people that you can actually play. Ryan's an extremely good cueist, a very good snooker player as well. So,
and in fact, sort of locally, so Ryan's from a sort of area not too far from where I live, in England, south of England. So Ryan plays in a lot of our local events, and last season he actually won the West of England Snooker Championship, the Open West of England Snooker, and the West of England Billiards in the same season. So
wow, impressive!
And there's quite a good field of players that go in those events. So that's an example of his ability in both games, cueing ability,
and he's generally very, very good with both hands. He's quite ambidextrous, which seems to be becoming much more popular on the snooker circuit these days, with the example of Ronnie O'Sullivan. We might be having a change of commentary for a while, and we've got George Chamis joining us. Welcome, George. Come on down, say a few words to the viewers.
Ryan Mears, 2. Seven. Ten.
I'm joined in commentary, Peter Tankard here, and I'm joined in commentary by George Chamis, my friend from Sydney. And George, what a great privilege it is to have these top players here in our country.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Pete. Is it all right to go? Yeah, it's an absolute privilege to be here. This is, for me, heaven on earth. It's just incredible to be a part of this.
Who's impressed you so far?
I've never seen David play live, and I'll tell you what I saw yesterday at the Yarraville Club was very, very, very impressive. 655 in no time in a 45-minute match.
What do you think his strengths are? You were about to say potting, weren't you?
we just saw him miss here, but I think he's got it all in the bag there. He's probably just going through the motions. And his all-round ability. I mean, these guys are incredibly talented. Their touch is just next to none. They just make it look so easy.
That's the problem, isn't it? Is that when you look at players like this, the game does look easy.
Yes, it does look very easy, but it is very, very hard, especially conditions like these. Your average player doesn't get to use these sort of conditions very often, and we all end up struggling on these, but to these guys, it's their bread and butter. All they do is just tickle the balls, and yeah, look at this, couple of shots back up top. Just incredible.
This little bob of the head that David has on the end of each shot doesn't seem to worry him too much.
Yeah. As long as it's just a little bob of the head, not like us, bob of the head, the body, the legs.
The arms, everything. So, George, you've actually represented 2 countries at Billiards. Talk us through that.
Are you trying to embarrass me here?
No, I'm not trying to embarrass you. I think it's an interesting story. George was born in Syria but has lived in Australia for 48 years. But at various times he's represented both Australia and Syria at Billiards. Is Billiards actually played in Syria at all?
I didn't even know that snooker was played till I realised that the IBSF was holding a world championship there in 2010. And to me that was really, really impressive to see a minnow country like that put on such a world-class event. And I was fortunate enough to be asked to represent at a master's level, which was very daunting for me as well. So, but
was that snooker or billiards?
That was snooker.
Yep.
That was snooker in 2010, just before the war started, and I was impressed by some of the players there. There was at least 2 really world-class players that were just regular 100 breakers, but they probably just needed the experience to travel around the world and be amongst a lot of top players to have the knowledge. But talking about billiards, I was asked to represent in 2015 in the IBSF, so I was quite happy to do that. And yeah, it is great to see these minnow countries come on board.
I think the surprise package of this tournament, I asked Chris Coombe earlier, who's from the UK, to name the 4 finalists for the World Billiards Championship, and he named Mike Russell, Peter Gilchrist, David Causier, and
Pankaj?
No. Matthew Bolton.
Wow.
And I'll be surprised. I think quite a few of the English guys will be surprised at the quality of players from India and Myanmar. They don't get to see an awful lot of them. They mainly play in the IBSF events. But frankly, I'll be surprised if there aren't at least 2 from Asian countries, and my guess is 3 in the semi-finals of the World Championship. But we'll see. It's a question of whether they adapt to conditions as well as anyone else, but certainly the Myanmar guys arrive here largely unheralded, but they've got some brilliant players there.
Yes, well, I'm looking forward to seeing these guys because...
I think you have one in your group, don't you?
Yeah, I do.
And I've got Causier in my group.
Yeah.
And I think you have Quay U in your group.
Yeah, it's a mouthful, but I'm looking forward to playing these guys. I don't know what he's like, but I hear a lot about these Myanmar guys. Apparently they're very, very good. Unless you really see them, you don't appreciate how good they are. Like what we're watching here with David. I've never seen him before, and it's just mind-boggling what they do. Look at it. It's just it's just like a machine, a well-oiled machine. Is just, you know, there's nothing to think about. Just one feather and they hit.
Yeah.
It's just incredible. So, yeah, if you think they're these Myanmar guys are that good, it would be very, very interesting. But, you know, it looks like it's the best field has been assembled for a very long time, apparently. So,
I think this is the strongest field in my lifetime. Because we've got an outbreak of peace between the IBSF and WBL, which is just fantastic for the game. We've got all the best players in the world in one room, with the possible exception only of Geet Sethi, who couldn't make it at the last minute. But we've got so many talented guys here. We're in for a fantastic week of billiards. We're about to be joined in commentary. I'm about to be joined in commentary by Joe Manici, 13 times. Or is it 14 now, Joe?
yeah,
14 times.
14, yeah.
14 times, I should have known. 14 times New South Wales state champion and multiple Australian champion as well. And Joe has a lot of insights to the game. But even Joe, I think, has probably not seen something like David Causier before. So let me put Joe on and he'll talk you through the rest of the match.
Welcome, Joe.
David Causier, 120.
Great to have you here, mate.
Yeah, thanks, George. I'm just having a bit of trouble with the microphone at the moment. I haven't done this. This is my second time, but is that on now?
Yeah, you don't have to hold it, so you just
So
keep
it's on.
it.
Right, it's on. Okay. Yeah, mate, it's great to be here. We all love the game, and to be in the mix with all these talented players is something that we might never have the pleasure to do again, especially in Australia, but hopefully it will come back one day. But it's been a great effort by all the guys in behind the scenes, the organisers, and to bring this to Australia, especially Jason Colebrook, which I think was the main instigator to get it here.
Joe, you've just played David, David Causier, and
Is that on? Sorry.
just run it through. I know it was very daunting, but just run it through. What did you think? And, you know, you're a very talented player yourself, but this is another level. So maybe just let the people know what's your experience at it. And
Well, it's there's multiple answers there to that question. It's a great question. I was asked by Mac Redkowitz, and he knows a fair bit about the game, and after the match I played with David, he asked me, he said, what did you learn? Did you learn anything new that David does that, you know, because we always learn shots, we pick up shots off different players. I didn't really learn anything. You know, we've all played the shots that David plays, but professional level, they do it so well. And in billiards, it's knowledge and touch. They're the two most important ingredients. Obviously, you have to have the cueing, but we won't talk about the cue action. That's a given. But knowledge and touch in billiards is everything. And David obviously loves the game. He's from Middlesbrough. It was a melting pot of billiard players. Peter Gilchrist, Chris Shutt, Mike Russell, just to name a couple of the greats that come from that area. Roxton Chapman. So he loves the game. He puts the work in. He's got great foresight. He knows all the shots. He's got the touch. He's got the knowledge. He deserves everything he gets from the game, and it's a pleasure to see him in Australia for the first time. I've watched him a fair bit. I actually watched him in India when I was there in 2004, and he was a rocket over there. I actually mentioned to him you know, you've slowed down a little bit. he's still faster than anyone,
Incredible.
George. You know, yeah, that we've got in this country. But Steve Mifsud's probably catching up with him. He's a bit of a rocket when he gets going. But David's just such a good scorer. He's like a, you know, I actually, if you want the truth, I said to him today, I said, we've got Neil Robertson in snooker, and he's been given the nickname as the Melbourne Machine. Well, you're the Middlesbrough Machine. That's what I'm going to call you. And I actually said it. He had a little bit of a smile, but...
Joe, you mentioned knowledge and touch. You have a wealth of knowledge in this game, mate, but the touch that these guys possess is just far superior to what we know. The conditions that they play on, the control, it's just mind-boggling for me.
Look, it definitely is, but let me say, I can still remember my first 5 years of playing. I had a coach in the city, Frank Haywood, and his touch, he'd been playing 70 years. He was in his 80s then, and he said he started playing when he was about 15. And his touch was incredible. I really mean that. And I said, Frank, how do you get that touch? Where did it come from? Are you gifted? What's happened? And I really thought for a few years later, I was only a B-grade player at the time, and I thought that was a touch that's a God-given talent. But let me tell you, in all honesty, it's not. The touch comes from the work. As long as you practice correctly, practice the shots correctly. Like Walter in his book for nursery cannons, he's got the tap, tap, tap shot, and that develops touch. So all these players that have got the touch, you know, like Mike Russell's got the best touch at top of the table than anyone. He's developed that. So you can develop it, but you've got to put the hours in. You know, there's only one place that success comes before work, and that's in the dictionary. So you've got to put the work in. And if you put the work in and you gain the knowledge, you know, you'll start making big breaks at this game.
Anything's possible.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you think of this gentleman playing now, Ryan Mears? What do you know about him? I know very little.
Well, to be honest,
obviously he's an up-and-comer.
Yeah, to be honest with you, he hasn't got that natural talent that obviously David's got a little bit of natural talent in the game, and some of the others, like, you know, Peter. You can normally tell the players that have got natural talent because they're a little bit faster than the average player.
Geez, what a shot.
Yeah, great shot. Yeah, there's a guy in the... there's a guy called Arcani. He's got a long Thai name. He does that in the snooker, the professional snooker world over there, and he does that. That's what this guy just did, Ray. And it's a good way to play it, you know, in certain circumstances, and obviously he's comfortable with it. But no, look, this guy's young, you know. As I said to you, you know, I'm not belittling the game in any way or any player, but if you put the time in, you know, put the work in, gain the knowledge, and you're putting the work in, you gain the touch, you'll start making the big breaks, and that's what you need to beat these guys. You know, you need to put the work in, because they've done it. They've all done it. David, believe me, he's put a lot of work in. You know, Peter, Mike, you know, I don't know what they're doing at the moment, but I know in the past years they've put a hell of a lot of work in the game, so they deserve everything they get, and it's great to have them over here, because it's awesome talent we got on display.
Just having a few words with Pete before you came in, and he sort of mentioned, what's your 4 semi-finalists? He was leaning towards some of the Myanmar blokes playing there. I don't know enough about them. What do you...
I've seen them play. They've obviously developed.
And what would be your 4 semi-finalists if you had to...
What, are you talking about the World or the World Open?
In the World.
The World Championship. Well, obviously we don't know the draw there, but yeah, you're saying who I think would be top 4, but we don't know how the draw's going to pan out. But, you know, you'd have to be crazy to go past, you know, Peter, David, you know, Peter Gilchrist, David Causier, Mike Russell and Pankaj Advani, and then following you got Rob Hoare, Matthew Bolton, Drav Harrier, who's playing at the moment. He's playing Peter at the moment. in one of the other quarters. But they're the guys. They're the names. They're the ones that put the time in. They're the ones that are getting the results. And billiards is a little bit different to snooker, where snooker you can be a bit lucky and sort of win, a match. But billiards, it's normally the talent that gets through, the guy that puts in the hard work and's got the talent.
Robbie Folvari, Joe, former world champion. Good to see him playing again. It is a little bit hard for him. What do you think about that? I mean, I've never really seen him play, but It is great to see him play.
I'll answer that in a minute. I've just been told that Drav Harrier, who's playing Peter at the moment, Peter Gilchrist, is on a 320 break at the moment. Yeah.
Wow.
So it looks like Peter could be out of the World Open because he was behind when I was in the room not long ago. And
Peter was a fair bit in front, but I think he might be behind with that break.
Yeah, well, I was sitting in there for about half an hour and he didn't do much, and Drav had 2 centuries then, so yeah. Yeah, and looks like Robbie's gone, and I think Matthew's gone as well. Yeah, I think Matthew might be out as well, because when I was in there, Rob was playing really well and had 2 or 3 centuries when I was sitting there, keeping Matthew cold. But Mike's Mike's about 500 odd in front of Robbie at the moment. So unfortunately,
and that's no disgrace to Robbie.
Yeah, our Aussies. Well, you asked me the question about Robbie, and Robbie, he's a friend of mine, and I got a lot of respect for him as a player, and off the table, he's a great guy too. But Robbie just doesn't put in anymore. He doesn't put in like he used to.
Yep.
He's playing a lot of pool lately. And Rob's always told me, he's always said to me, he said, I've got to practice 2 months before a tournament. And, he hasn't put that 2 months in. But to be honest with you, you don't practice 2 months before a tournament. Not being disrespectful to Robbie, you've got to keep your momentum at the game. You've got to play it continuously, basically, to be good. Because that's what all these top guys do. They're playing it all the time. They follow all the tournaments. Yeah, but Robbie was a great player. I really, really respect his ability and knowledge at the game.
Yeah. So it looks like David, Mike.
Yeah, Drav Harrier, and the other one's Rob Hall.
Going through to the semis.
So we got all the
Matthew
internationals.
was a fair bit in front. We don't know what the go is now, but I'm not sure what the score is there exactly on the other table.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, when I was sitting out there, I didn't see the scoreboard at all, to be honest with you. But Rob made 2 centuries. One was a big century and one was another century. And Matthew had a 53 break that I saw. So that's why I come to the conclusion, without looking at the scoreboard, that he was behind. But as you say, maybe Matthew got in front early, and I'm not sure. But anyway, let's talk about this game a little bit, George, and because we have been neglecting it, especially for the people listening.
But there's some pictures there on the right of your
Yeah, that's
screen
Drav.
there.
That's that 320 break that Peter Tankard just brought me some information about it, so he's still going. He won.
We just heard some news that Matthew is well up.
Well, he must have made a break. Did he make a break? Yeah. Well, yeah, okay.
Matthew will be going through to play
I stand
Causier.
corrected. Yeah, I stand corrected there. When I was watching, he was Rob was dominating the table, but I've just been told that looks like Matthew's going through, so he must have made a double century at least at some stage.
That's great news for Matthew.
Yep, good on him.
Got an Aussie
keep the
in
Aussie
there in
flag
the
going.
semi-final.
Yep, for sure. That's great.
Wish him all the best. Matthew's been outstanding in this country. He's been unbeatable.
Yeah. Look, what Matthew's done in this country, we all know. And if he performs like that, he can beat any one of these guys. And I think they all know that too. So for whatever reason, Matthew hasn't performed against the greats as well as he would have liked. But there's no question in his ability. No question at all. He's definitely top 4 in the world to me.
Oh, well, let's hope he'll have a big one in this tournament and be right up there and challenge these guys. It'd be nice to see Matthew do that because he's got all the ability or got all the shots, got the knowledge. He's got it all.
Yeah,
And
he had a great coach, Bob Marshall.
we just got news that Advaj Haria finished the break on 3.99.
Yeah, it's a shame he didn't get the 400, but anyway, he will do that in the World, if not later on today in this World Open. But he's he's definitely one of the next great Indians that come through. There was Geet Sefi, well, there was Michael Ferreira, Subhash Agrawal in the early days, but then there was Geet and Pankaj, but looks like Drav Harrier, Surav Kafari.
He seems to be destined for great heights.
Yeah.
Possible world champion one day.
Yeah, I agree, George. Yeah. Yeah, he's got the potting skills as well, which you need at modern billiards. In the old days, apparently, or what I've been told and what I've read, that the potting wasn't a main feature of billiards. They actually weren't great potters. Apart from, the heyday when Joe Davis and Walter played, because they were great potters. But when I was growing up with the game, a lot of the billiard players, the old timers especially, they said, I can't pot, but they could play the billiard shots. But these days, all the great billiard players are great potters as well.
The other person is great to see here again, Mike Russell. I mean, he's been a champion for a very long time. And there's a few people knocking on the door, I guess, on a regular basis. Of course, David is the prime and Pankaj, but Russell's been there and done that. And he's not out of it. Well, he's never out of it, but what I mean is these guys are challenging now, and he's probably looking forward to this challenge. And he probably hasn't got it all his way like before. He's been a great champion.
It's always hard, I think, in any field or any sport. Once you've done it all, like Mike has, to keep doing it. And what I mean by that is to put in those long hours that he used to put in. So, going back to the work ethic again, I don't think that Mike's putting the work in that he used to put in, the hours. And I think that's why his game's probably dropped off, where he's not making those gigantic breaks that he used to make.
You're probably right. Also, as we get older, it doesn't get any easier.
Yeah, exactly.
The mental concentration is just incredible, these guys.
But there are exceptions, George. I'll give you Matthew Bolton's coach, Bob Marshall. He come out of retirement, 15-year retirement in 1985, and he beat Phil Tarrant, the current Australian champion, in Tasmania in the final. And he went overseas, and he was 75 years old. 75 years old at the time. And he went overseas and he played, I think it was in Delhi, New Delhi or Delhi. And he played a fellow, it was a 23-year-old guy, an Indian, called Geet Sefi. And Geet had a 760 break earlier in the tournament. He had the high break at the tournament. And Bob Marshall got to the final, would you believe? At 75-year-old, after coming out of 15-year retirement. He won his Western Australian state title, then he won the Australian in 85, and that qualified him to play in the Worlds.
65
and
it looks like
Geet told me himself.
This game just concluded.
No, it's finished. Okay, yep.
Great game.
Landslide victory, wasn't it there, Dan?
Yeah.
Landslide victory.
Ryan's handled his health pretty well. Nearly 300 points against Dave.
695
to
293. Yeah, okay.
Great effort.
Well, I think the right guy won that on paper anyway.
For sure.
We all expected him to win. But what was I saying about Bob Marshall?
So he made the final, you were saying.
Bob made the final. And Geet said to me himself, right, I didn't know this fact, but I mentioned that to Geet once. I said, how did Bob play, when he was 75 against you in the final? And Geet said to me, you wouldn't believe it, Joe. he led me the first session. It was 3 2-hour sessions, and Bob Marshall, at 75-year-old, led after the first session. That's what Geek told me, and I thought that was so. You were just talking about age and billiards and that.
Yeah.
There are exceptions.
I guess experience
and Marshall was one of
put him
them.
through, but ability is
And you got to have the passion. You got look. Most of us have got the passion for billiards. That's why we play it. But you got to keep that passion as you get older. So you were talking about age being a factor, and it is energy-wise, concentration-wise. Totally agree. But
everything's got to fall into place. I think you got to be match fit, and there's a lot of hours to be played to win something like that.
Exactly.
And if you don't put in, you won't get that match fitness, and fatigue settles in, and you know what it's like. I mean, you've been there, done that. So
I apologise to everybody listening too that we didn't actually talk about many shots in the game, did we, George? But we get carried away, George and I, and Peter Tankard, who's sitting just beside us, and we love the game, and we just remember things in the game, and then we just start gossiping and talking, and hopefully some people that are listening have gained some knowledge and some of the insights into the players and the game.
Sure, I think there'll be plenty to talk about, especially shots and that. Is that much billiards going to be played over the next 5 or 6 days or what have you? So, people don't always want to just listen to shots. They want to know stories, and they want to know what goes on.
Yep.
I mean, it's a game of history. People want to know.
But I do promise if I get another spot to commentate during the week, I will talk about shots a bit more, people. But I'm signing off now, and thanks very much, George.
Before you go, are we going to get the Walter Lindrum poem off you?
Maybe
not now, but somewhere in your next commentary?
We will in the next few days, yeah.
That would be great, mate. Thanks.
I've actually got
coming in.
two Walter Lindrum poems.
Good on you, Joe.
All right, thanks, George.
Thank you.
See you.